Will the Venture Brothers movie answer its biggest questions? This is Nerdist Now. Go Team Venture indeed, folks. Less than a year ago, the shocking news of the Venture Brothers cancellation hit headlines, and fans of the long-running Adult Swim series mourned and pleaded for some generous soul out there to please save the Venture Brothers. Well, folks, on Wednesday, their prayers were finally answered. Adult Swim announced that Hank, Dean, Doc, and Brock will be reunited and return once more, this time in movie form. Now, it's very likely the swan song for the Super Science family, and there are a lot of unanswered questions that were set up at the end of Season 7 that are desperately in need of resolution. Now, we are going to be digging into the major hanging threads left behind and possible theories about the upcoming film, which means we are heading into major spoiler territory, so if you haven't caught up on the show from at least Season 4 onward, make like Dr. Killinger and take a magic umbrella on out of here.
Sweet love.
Still here? Great. In a press release for the upcoming films, Adult Swim gave a slight glimpse at what we can expect from this first family of science. Doc's latest invention will either bankrupt the Ventures or launch them to new heights as Hank searches for himself, Dean searches for Hank, the Monarch searches for answers, and a mysterious woman from their past threatens to bring the entire world crashing down on them. So let's start things off with a quick refresher on where the Ventures are and the rest of the Ventureverse is at the end of Season 7. Doc Venture was given control of Ventec Industries in New York after his twin brother, Jonas Venture Jr., willed the company to him following his demise. Dean became a student at Stuyvesant University, while Hank had been living dangerously and dating Serena, the daughter of crime boss Wide Whale. These two stories ultimately intersect at the end of Season 7 when Dean and Serena start hooking up behind Hank's back. Hank discovers this with the help of the terrifying Scare Bear, who carries him to Dean's dorm room after Hank suffers a major head injury during a blizzard. Hank then falls into a short coma and eventually disappears into the city to find himself dressed in his plastic Batman mask after he wakes up. Doc is kidnapped by the Guild and teleported to Meteor Major, where he's prepared for a ritual called the Safrax Protocol. Meanwhile, Brock is living his best life killing Guild strangers inside Ventec Tower. As for the Monarch, he has been reinducted into the new Guild of Calamitous Intent after his secret double life as the Blue Morpho, the mantle his crime-fighting father used to use before a plane crash killed him and his wife, but more on that in just a little bit. The Monarch is presented with Doc Venture as a sacrifice as part of his reinduction to the Guild, but he declines to murder Doc, which helps him complete his test. Guild agents Watch and Ward then let slip that the Monarch and Doc are blood related, which has been hinted at for multiple seasons. Previous evidence includes Doc and the Monarch playing together as kids in old Venture compound photos, Doc referring to the Monarch as Malcolm after he and Billy emerge from Grover Cleveland's presidential time machine for a hot second, which, raises a lot of questions in regard to time travel, but that's neither here nor there, or when. And there's also this Sergeant Hatred line from Operation Prom.
All right, you're gonna need to change. You're a size Doc?
Most loose ends within the show have been tied up, and yes, I will put an asterisk there because we're not going to talk about the Order of the Triad or who exactly is Force Majeure, the former head of the Guild. The investors, Jonas Jr. and Monstroso, are all dead. The Guild and OSI have been reestablished. The remnants of Sphinx have finally been destroyed, along with the Peril Partnership being feasibly dismantled. But what did catch our eye is that line about a mysterious woman from their past. That really stood out in the description of the film. In Hank's coma dream, the Action Man reveals that the boy's mom is an actress named Bobby St. Simone, and not the infamous Myra who popped up in several episodes prior. Now, according to the Action Man, the boy's mother changed her name and moved away after a falling out with Doc Venture, so we might never see who the boy's mom actually is. The mysterious woman from their past? Well, that could very well be the Monarch and Rusty's mother, said mother being Monarch's mom, who tragically died in a plane crash, which we need to put an asterisk on as well, because to get deeper into this theory, we kinda need to talk about Ben. Voiced by J.K. Simmons, Ben only appears in the Very Venture Halloween special and is a former Venture Industries genetics expert who's been living in the old Potter house at the far end of the Venture compound. Dean enters the house on a dare from Hank and Dermot and learns about the cloning technology that kept the boys immortal for such a long time until the pods and clone slugs were destroyed in seasons 3 and 4. Ben helped develop the cloning technology alongside Jonas Sr., which leads to a bombshell that's dropped on Dean in season 7, episode 5. Dean goes to talk to Ben, but he's informed by Helper Model 2, voiced by Rhys Darby, that Ben has traveled to New Zealand. Dean and the sentient Helper Model have a nice chat. Helper recognizes that Dean is a clone, and right before Dean leaves, Helper calls him Rusty, heavily implying that Doc Venture himself is a clone, a fact that Venture Brothers co-creator Jackson Public confirmed to us back in 2019. Now this is where we put on our Hank Venture-style detective hats and ask, could Doc himself be a clone from the same DNA as the Monarch? In the season 7 episode Arrears in Science, it's revealed that the Monarch's parents had trouble conceiving losing a child, and Jonas Venture offered his help with a fertility experiment he'd been working on in the late 1960s. Jonas insisted that his science worked just fine, and the couple had a child within a year, leaving some mystery as to whether or not he used his cloning technology to help give them a son. And Jonas probably jumped at the chance to sleep with Blue Morpho's wife regardless because he's an all-around terrible person, and he's absolutely the kind of guy who would enjoy having a son to carry on his legacy while not wanting to be tied down by a wife. Now this would also explain why Rusty never talks about or reminisces about his mom, unlike the Monarch. On top of that, Rusty and Monarch having the same mother could lead to shaking up the whole Venture universe because she would have ties to incredibly powerful people in both the Guild and Venture Industries, especially since we know that Colonel Lloyd Venture was a founding member of the Guild, hence why Dean was the rightful heir as sovereign like we saw in Season 4. Now you're probably saying, but if the Monarch and Doc have the same DNA, why is Doc bald? Well, if you remember Season 1, Doc blames his fraternal twin Jonas Jr. for stealing his hair while he was trapped inside Doc's body for nearly 40 years. You know, that old explanation for this. Jonas Jr. might have also been an unforeseen mutation from the cloning process, which is something we saw happen in the episode Perchance to Dean. And in Bright Lights Dean City, we see a Dr. Venture from a different dimension with a full head of hair. And I know this might be a bit of a stretch, but if there's any show that has the ability to tie together multiple years-long stories based off a single line of dialogue from like 2003, it's the Venture Brothers.
2 years, 17 days. From a stroke.
Toast! What's wrong with you?
Oh my God, is he having a heart attack?
A stroke.
Oh my God!
But in the meantime, folks, tell us, what are your favorite Venture Brothers theories? Do you think the boys will find each other again? And who's your favorite villain, and why is it Brick Frog?
Rick Frog!
Thank you!
Let us know in the comments below, and for the latest and greatest in the world of pop culture and super science, stay tuned to Nerdist.com.